Welcome, and thank you for joining us in our training presentation, Effective Family Engagement in Transition. My name is Martha Frank, and I've been a family consultant here at Vermont Family Network for the past 15 years. I have extensive experience in working with families of transition-age youth. I'm a parent, a special educator, and a consultant with years of training on the topic of transition. Thank you for joining us today. Why are we talking about family engagement? Positive outcomes, positive educational outcomes, and employment success. We're talking about the future of youth that you are working with. Voc Rehab counselors work with in-school youth ages 14 and up. Their families are an integral part of the journey, and their involvement plays a very critical role in their success. The goal of this presentation is to help counselors gain a keener understanding of the importance and power of including families in the transition process. We will be discussing the importance, the benefits, the barriers, and strategies in your role in working with families, and how this information can help VR counselors in guiding their work. We'll be talking about family engagement, the importance of it, the benefits, the barriers, and strategies. We'll be going over several learning topics, and such as what is family involvement, why is it important, what are the benefits, what do we know, and what are the barriers. Are we engaging all families and considering cultural diversity? We'll be talking about current collaboration strategies, and we'll be highlighting quite a few resources for you to be using in your work. So what is family engagement? Family engagement is any way that a child's adult caregivers, and those are parents, foster parents, siblings, and grandparents, just to name a few, effectively support learning and healthy development. What does this look like? This can look like helping with homework, meeting with the school folks about your child's needs, being on committees, attending meetings with agencies involved with their child, just to name a few. The benefits. Now, I'm quoting from a book called Homeschool Relations, Working Successfully with Parents and Families by G. Olson and M.L. Fuller. And the benefits are noted as parent and family involvement is a predictor of post-secondary success. It's the most accurate predictor of a student's school achievement, is the extent to which the family encourages learning. Now we'd like to bring you to a video of a young woman whose name is Sarah Vasquez. She's a young woman who has a disability, who's a wonderful public speaker, and I think her video clip will help illustrate the importance and power of the families.
To the words my mother said that day. You can do anything you put your mind to. The following class days, I found myself in Dr. So-and-so's office, surrounded by her books and her degrees. And I told her that I didn't expect any special treatment from her just because I had a disability, but that I did expect her to treat me with the same level of respect he would any other student in her class. think she read the 88 that weekend. So as I look out on this beautiful array of people and see my mother, as I've saw and seen her so many times before in a crowd, at plays or at talent shows in high school, I'm reminded that if there is one role that she played as my parent, she was a constant supporter of my dreams. She was always there, saying you could do anything you put your mind to. In high school, I wanted to be the valedictorian of my senior class. And Lord knows I was near trying to be a valedictorian, especially in the first year and a half of high school when I was being mainstreamed and I had the issue with everyone, and I rebelled and started to cut class. Thank God for my resource teacher who never gave up and invested in me and had expectations of me. She kept shoving this thing called a journal in my face. And eventually I gave into that journal and found my voice. So the desire for me to be valedictorian, the core of that desire and that dream was to have my voice be heard. And don't we all want that? And that dream didn't come true. But that's okay. Because in life, there was a bigger dream. I get to stand in front of hundreds of people many times in the year, and I love it. But my mom never said that I couldn't be valedictorian ever. So I have to leave you with this last thought. That what seems to be an impossible dream could lead a child, a human being like me, to something bigger that can impact the world. And at the end, I discovered the person I was meant to be. Thank you.
So, some of the So, some of the things to be thinking about. What are your thoughts? What was the common theme in her presentation? Her message that she learned from her mother was have high expectations, dream big. She learned self-advocacy and her humor from the support she received, and how important it is for others to have high expectations. That the support she received from a counselor and from home helped her dream, and her family's most important role was to be the constant supporter of her dreams. This helped her become confident and helped her become successful. So now I'd like to bring you to what's called the National Longitudinal Transition Study. There is a web page that folks can look at that highlights more of this study. We'll talk a little bit about this, and I will let you know that the website is listed in the resources at the end of this presentation. What this report highlighted are some findings. And one of them was that transition age youth whose families are more involved in their schools are more likely to have regular paid jobs while they're in school, which is a really important factor for future employment. I believe there are studies that have demonstrated that those who work while they're in school have increased employment opportunities when they have progressed past school. The report also talked a little bit about family involvement, and it noted that very few parents, 11.5%, are highly involved in transition planning and training. And the reason this is important is families are not always informed around the transition process. And this is more true, I think, for young people who are on individual education programs or IEPs. But in order for a parent to really fully participate in that planning process, they need to be informed. And I certainly hope that if you meet families who need assistance and with learning more about that process, that you do tap into the resources at Vermont Family Network. Now I'd like to bring you to something called the National Collaboration Workforce and Disability, and there's a brief called The Tapping of the Powers of Families, and I believe I have the web page up. I believe I do. I'll just keep mentioning that one of the things they note in here is that families are often the first, most knowledgeable, and most consistent case manager that youth with disabilities have. And we've brought this page up for you to look at. I hope you can reference it when this presentation's finished. And again, this is in the resource section. So what are the benefits of engaging families? Parent and family involvement is a predictor of post-secondary success. It's the most accurate predictor of a student's school achievement is the extent to which the family encourages learning. So there's more evidence in research, and this information comes from, it's an excerpt from the Home School Relations Working Successfully with Parents and Families by G. Olson, M. L. Fuller. And there is quite a bit of literature that supports the absolute critical important role of parents. It also goes on to mention that around family involvement and supports, that all youth need parents, families, and other caring adults who have high expectations, this is consistent, which build upon the young person's strengths, interests, and needs, and fosters their ability to achieve independence and self-sufficiency. They are involved in their lives and assisting them towards adulthood. They have access to information about employment, further education, and community resources. They take an active role in transition planning with schools and community partners and have access to medical, professional, and peer support networks. Now we're going to be looking at a brief video which is about a young woman named Rachel, and these are on the PACER Center, which is the National Parent Center on Transition and Employment. Rachel is going to be speaking about the role of parents.
my development, she first let me know that I could do it. So anytime that something happened that could make me think I couldn't do it, my mom will step in. Even though she was really, really afraid, she'll step in and help me out. Parents are pivotal in the life of a child, but even more if that child has a disability. And if you have a child with blindness, the best thing you can do for them is, number one, believe in them. Number two, create environments where they can learn and get information. Doesn't matter if it's important information or not, but just fill their brains with every information you can. And then third is to infuse on their hearts that they can be whoever they want to be, and let them learn the process of advocating and learning that it's their right to have information and to participate like everybody else.
So if we highlight what Rachel was talking about, it's the importance of parents. And the takeaways are, I can do it. That's what was instilled in Rachel. And the importance of strengthening a belief in oneself, having those high expectations, always creating learning environments, and helping them reach their dreams. It's the video.
Have an opportunity to speak to you. I think that
So now we're going to talk about viewing families as assets. No matter what the demographics, students are more likely to earn higher grades and test scores, attend school regularly, have better social skills, graduate, and go on to post-secondary education when schools and families partner. That's a quote from Dr. Joyce Epstein from the National Network of Partnership of Schools. View families as assets. They are the most valuable members of the teams, having the most fundamental information and lots of information about their youth with disabilities. Families motivate and encourage their children to become self-advocates and directors of their own futures. They tap into their own personal and professional networks, expanding the opportunities for learning and employment. Until the youth with disabilities learns how to take the lead, families are the experts on their youth with disabilities. Their active involvement can make the difference between success and failure. So what is a parent's role? And this is an excerpt from Pleat and Wandry, a publication. Collaborate in the IEP process. They are instructors in the youth's emergent independence. They are decision makers and evaluators. They're system change agents. They're peer mentors. And when you're working with youth, whether the student is on an IEP or they are receiving supports through Title I or the educational support system, depending on where the child is at, these are the youth that you'll be looking at. These are the families that you'll be working with. So now we ask ourselves, how can families help Voc Rehab? How can they help transition counselors? They can help youth learn soft skills. They can help in networking, learning the importance of an appearance, finding volunteer opportunities, and learning about the importance of good attitudes and work responsibilities. Families in transition planning, how can they help VR? They can help professionals learn about youth strengths and needs. They can assist in exploring interests relating to living and work. They can ask questions, be part of discussions, help develop post-secondary goals, and help youth complete transition-related activities. They can learn about what questions to ask when looking at post-secondary agencies and services. Parents can assist by engaging their own networks for experience opportunities, job leads, and other supports. They can help build work skills at home and help youth interact appropriately with others, and learn the importance of maintaining an appropriate personal appearance for work. They play a role in career exploration and support work in the workplace. So a few years ago, back in 2009, the Office of Special Education Programs, which is OSEP, which was funded by the Teacher Project, a survey was conducted, and issues were identified as being of the greatest relevance to families that were served by parent training information centers. Here's the top 8 transition issues that families pointed to. Strategies to help parents promote self-determination of youths. Internship and work experience opportunities for students with disabilities. Promising practices that prepare youths with disability for employment. Supported or customized for youths with significant disabilities. Information and training materials on ADA that could be used with youth, not just their families. Because what we do find is that as transition age youth move towards adulthood, they often need more training, as much training possibly as their parents have had, so that they can also advocate and learn about the transition process. They also need family-friendly information about VR services. They need information about post-secondary education options and examples of transition programs that blend funding from education, workforce, VR, human services, and other systems. So now I'm going to be pointing to a resource that I'm hoping many are familiar with. This resource is called the National Collaborative Workforce and Disability. This is called Guideposts, and it has sections devoted to schooling, career preparation, family involvement, and it has connecting activities. Again, this is listed in our resources, but this is where you as VR counselors can certainly get additional help, and you can download a copy of the National Collaborative on Workforce Development on a particular website, which is listed again in our resources. So how do we use Guidepost? Use it as a framework for defining, developing, and tracking its youth transition services and programs throughout the state. Guidepost identifies proven strategies for meeting the holistic needs of youth transitioning from high school to employment, post-secondary education, and independent living. This is a brief that I also hope you get a chance to look at. Again, it's in our resource section. It's an info brief also from the same publication. It's called The Role of the Family, and I think it's a relatively new brief. So what are the benefits of family involvement in career development? And this is according to research commissioned by the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. Students whose parents are involved in their career exploration and planning are more actively engaged in school, more open to change, and resilient when facing challenges. This is also from that brief, The Role of the Family. So now we want to be talking about how do we practice cultural competence in our work with families. If we're working with staff, and that's our role, we would be providing training to staff on cultural competence. We would learn how to use interpreter services and identify them. We would involve good language translators and cultural interpreters. We would provide and share information in native language when possible. And please consider poverty and how it impacts families. All of these factors will certainly have a lot to do with how someone looks at transition planning for their children. Look for cultural attitudes that might help or hinder a family's willingness or ability to work in partnership with case managers. How do we practice cultural competence in our work with families? We provide training to staff on cultural competence, learn how to identify the good services. And one of the things I'd like to mention is that we provide and share information in the native language when possible. I noted this in here because this is part of the Rehabilitation Act. So, some of the things you want to be thinking about and talking with coworkers and your colleagues, what are the challenges that you have in engaging families, and what practices currently hinder families from participating in transition planning? Some of the barriers that have been identified through lots of evidence-based research are lack of understanding of transition process and how parents may not feel prepared. And we talked a little bit about that earlier in the presentation. Families may be exhausted from the daily needs of taking care of a child with a disability. Meetings might be held at an inconvenient time for families. Families may have had a negative experience in the past and they're reluctant because it may shape how they're feeling about future meetings. There might be other barriers that are real or perceived, or they may have very different values and beliefs. This is a sample of a survey that you probably can't see very well, but I wanted to highlight it so that when you go through the resources, you get a chance to possibly download this. This might be a useful tool when working with families. And this came from Engaging and Empowering Families in Secondary Transition, a Practitioner's Guide from 2009 from CEC. So what are some of the practices to promote family engagement? Collaborate with those families to identify how professionals and families can support the student in achieving their desired post-school goals. Do provide flexible times for meeting with families and possibly alternative places. Sometimes the school or a voc rehab office may not always be the most comfortable for a family. Get to know your families and provide those flexible times, and help families recognize, this is very, very important, help families recognize the importance of having high expectations for their child. Oftentimes, families who have children with disabilities are unaware of the possibilities and that they can have higher hopes than they may currently have. And let's see, some other things we should be talking about is make sure that the materials that you're using with families are accessible with the community you're working with. Recognize and honor differences such as ethnic, socioeconomic, and the values of the family. Other ways to engage families. What are the strategies do we use to actively solicit feedback, ideas, comments, and concerns from families? How do we communicate with families? And what information and skills do parents need to be full partners in the transition? So what do students with disabilities tell us? They describe themes that emerged from focus groups, and this came from a publication called Exceptional Children. And the themes that came out of this are creation of a vision for future, family and student involvement in transition planning process, and family involvement in facilitating self-determination. They discussed issues surrounding student views of family involvement. For example, what's the family's role in creating a future vision? What's the family involvement in the planning process? And family involvement in facilitating self-determination. And, there's a video clip in here that is in the resources that I would encourage you to look at. It's a young man named John who's also from the Pacer Center, and I think it's also something that you may find of interest. And this is a wonderful publication that I thought again to highlight. It's in our resource section. This is a video clip on introducing VR services that is also in our resource section. And, now in wrapping up, I want you to think about how can we help parents please do refer families to Vermont Family Networks, and please make sure that, if you're in needing any assistance in working with families around engagement or assisting a family in the transition planning process around employment or any post-secondary initiatives, please connect them with VFN. VFN serves families in your community, and please help share information about Vermont Family Network events and activities with families. We actually do quite a bit with publications and webinars. We have a wonderful web page. We have many resources. And, we do provide training. If there's ever a training that you're interested in, please contact us. Many of our trainings are also, again, archived. And please consider partnering with VFN to improve the systems that serve children with disabilities. So in reviewing our topics, the things we discussed today are: what is family engagement? Why is it important? What are the benefits? What do we know? What are the barriers? Are we engaging all families and considering cultural diversity? Current collaboration strategies. And lastly, I'd like to highlight a new resource at Vermont Family Network called the Transition Toolkit. The Transition Toolkit was funded through Vocational Rehabilitation, and it resides on the Vermont Family Network website. This is a publication that is available electronically. It's also available to be downloaded in print. I certainly would suggest that you use the electronic version because the electronic version is embedded with a multitude of hyperlinks that brings you to the resources you may need. This publication is for families, for professionals, and for youth. And I invite you to look at it. Many of the resources we've talked about are also listed in the resource section of this page. Here's a separate page that lists all of the links. I believe that when you're viewing this, you should be able to open up any one of these links. If you have any challenges or questions about this presentation, please don't hesitate to contact Vermont Family Network. And again, my name is Martha Frank. Thank you for joining us today.